Buenos nachos and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're going to be taking a look at this Xbox Chihiro console, also known as the Xbox Chichara console. And it's quite an interesting machine. It was pretty much Sega and Microsoft's combination into an arcade unit using Sega's arcade hardware with the brains or the power behind this arcade being the Xbox. So as you can tell, we have a lot of Sega's proprietary boards in here for the arcade machine. We have a RAM module, a lithium-ion battery right over here, fans, and all kinds of other stuff. We have our Xbox AV cable end, and then we have the proprietary Sega video in over here. So the thing with this console is that I have no way to power it on as is. So we're going to have to take it apart, and then we're going to have to examine what's going on with it, if it is indeed working, broken, or whatever. Let's go ahead and start the disassembly process, which isn't too bad. You just lift up the top like that. Go ahead and set that to the side. And then now we have yet another board right here, which I can only conclude is an intermediary board. And this one right here looks like it's connected to, well, you guessed it, the innards of an Xbox. And apparently, judging by this version right here, it looks like it's a 1.1, 1.2 version Xbox console. So the first thing we'll do is we'll disconnect this board right here, make our lives just a tad bit easier. And that's what it looks like. Next thing to do is to disconnect this board. So as you can tell, the power hooked up to this board right here, and of course the IDE cable. It looks like our USBs and our front panel also hooks up to this board. So we're going to need to disconnect those. And now we essentially have the Xbox revealed. This thing has a 128 MB RAM. Looks like this thing is already populated right here. And somebody has taken the liberty of removing the clock capacitor for us, so it doesn't look like there's any corrosion damage, best I can tell. Let's go ahead and take this apart even further and see if there are any modifications on the underside of the board. So we'll go ahead and disconnect this power cable, and obviously this really short IDE cable. Quite amazing that they'd provide you with a short cable like that. I don't believe this is how this came. I think somebody added a fan afterwards. Can't blame them. I've heard from many people on the internet that this fan dies, and well, once that dies, the GPU starts to go, so yep. We don't exactly have a tremendous amount of screws holding this thing in. It's mostly just those large posts that you see. Alright, so we'll remove these posts and then we'll go ahead and progress.
Do you have a console in need of repair or modification? Do you not have a console? Don't fret, we offer repairs and upgrades as well as refurbished ones. For more information, fill out the contact form on our website, nixelectronics.com.
In the interest of being able to put everything back together the way it was, we'll go ahead and mark where these long posts go. So is this thing safe to remove finally? Yes it is. Alright, so I guess at this point we'll go ahead and bust out the microscope and see if we do indeed have no clock capacitor damage. So what do we have here? I'd say that was a minuscule amount of damage. Nothing to really be concerned about per se. Now what about this bottom side of the board? So if you take a look at this area right here, it looks like the GPU area is mighty toasty. Well, let's go ahead and check and see if this thing is actually gone. So we're going to use our multimeter to verify that there is not a short in this area. So amazingly enough, this GPU has a decent reading. Now best I can tell, everything seems to check out with this console. Let's hook up a power supply to this Xbox and hook up the power button and see if we can get this thing to power on. And look at that Xbox arcade motherboard. So this thing will power on if you press the eject button, but not the power button. And of course right now it looks like it's fragging. And you cannot turn it off with the power button and obviously the eject button. So I think the next thing to try is to put a mod chip over here and see if we can boot this thing with another operating system. So I'm assuming that means we have to set the DO point. Alright, so I tried a different power button setup and it does look like the power button turns this console on. So I guess something was wrong with my other power button. This does, however, mean we still need to have this console try and boot into something else. So I'm assuming it was expecting to boot into Sega's operating system. So now we'll go ahead and set to boot from external by grounding the DO point. Alright, we have our mod chip and our DO point wired in. Looks like the mod chip isn't even getting any power over here. I'm going to try one more mod chip, but I think that we may actually have a faulty GPU, even though the resistance showed up fine. No, it would appear this console just continues to keep fragging no matter what we've tried. Of course, in this case, the mod chip is turning on. Well, no matter which chip I try, we can't seem to get this console to boot in. However, I'm thinking that we do have an issue with the GPU on this console just because of the fragging, and it was fragging even when we weren't trying to boot from an external device. If you found this video helpful or useful, please remember to leave us a like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Until next time.